So in the book, I thought that they might load on the Republicans all these problems. The first chapter, called Reciprocity, is a term that they said Donald Trump became enamored with during the end of his first term in presidency. It was this idea that depending on how you treat Donald Trump personally was how the federal government might treat you. It was described on a big governor's call about some of the civil unrest that was happening during the Black Lives Matter movement and the pandemic, and then came to a real head with a natural disaster that happened in the state of Connecticut. A Democratic governor, Ned Lamont, needing assistance from FEMA, getting on a call with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump supposedly saying, ask me nicely. So it may be suffice to say that that's not an appropriate way to speak to a governor in the United States as president, but that was what they were saying this idea of reciprocity means. It's in the second chapter, though, where it's called Fire and Forget. I read something that was very interesting. It will help illuminate the 2024 election for you and see if you can wade through the discussion that's happening now about who the two presidential candidates are and what they stand for. At Gump 2024, we like the idea of a third party because we think that there's less of an entanglement with corporations and special interests and money and media and everything. But this here, like I said, is coming from people that would be deemed on the left, and it's about Joe Biden's vice presidential nominee, Kamala Harris. So I'm going to read a little bit of it, and then you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. It was early in the summer of 2020, and Joe Biden was frustrated. Speaking in confidence with a close advisor to her husband's campaign, the future's First Lady posed a pointed question. There are millions of people in the United States, she began. Millions of people in the United States, she began. Why, she asked, do we have to choose the one who attacked Joe? The person she meant was Kamala Harris, and the looming choice was her husband's decision on a running mate. Jill Biden was not the only person in Biden's inner circle to be annoyed, even angry, at Harris's prominence in the search for a running mate. The California senator's campaign the previous year had been a stumbling disappointment marred by infighting among her staff, indecision about her message, and an unsteady performance by the candidate herself. Its high point had come in the very first debate of the Democratic primary process when Harris had delivered a finely scripted theatrical smackdown of Biden for reminiscing fondly about his past work with segregationists. That moment had wounded Joe Biden and enraged his family. They had regarded Harris as a personal friend, owing to her political relationship with Beau Biden during their overlapping terms as Attorney General of California and Delaware. Before announcing his own campaign, Biden had fretted to his advisors about the possibility of a nasty primary race that could turn personal. In one conversation, he mentioned Harris's past romantic relationship with Willie Brown, the former San Francisco mayor who had pointed Harris to a pair of minor political positions as a kind of thing that should be off limits. Biden had not been prepared to compete with Harris as a combatant adversary, and it showed on that Miami debate stage. The former vice president had looked gobsmacked and offered only a halting, stifled defense of his own long record. Now, a year later, the author of that humiliation was leading candidate to be Biden's running mate and one of his closest partners in government, and his wife wanted to know why. The answer was at once complicated and simple. For most of Biden's advisors, the selection of a running mate was a supremely tactical decision, all about doing whatever Biden needed to keep his advantage over Donald Trump and win the election. Kamala Harris was neither the candidate who most greatly impressed Biden's vice presidential search committee, nor the person his advisors saw as the most immediately prepared for the presidency. Yet she was the one they concluded would do the most help to secure a victory in an election Biden and his party viewed as having near apocalyptic stakes. The conclusion, however, was not easy in coming, least of all to the Biden family. So here we have a couple of authors, New York Times, CNN, describing the process in detail going on about all the different people that they considered for vice presidential pick and why Harris rose to the top of that list, ultimately being selected. Some of these arguments and things that they will lob at her as accusations, Republicans will do during the 2024 debates leading up to election. And you'll say, oh, that couldn't be possibly true. They're just using that against her because we have a system where it's first past the post, winner takes all, two parties duopoly, lesser of two evils sort of idea. But I wanted to just read this book, something that I wasn't expecting to read, saying that it's not just a Republican talking point. There are some evidence and there is some history that can point to the fact that she is not necessarily the best person in the Democratic Party to be leading this ticket, and it will help you just open your mind up to some of these ideas that up to this point you may have thought were just a smear tactic by the other side to either reduce this person to their race or sex and disqualify them on a basis that isn't rooted in any sort of history or fact. But the book that I wasn't expecting or reading that was delivered to me will tend to say otherwise.